As with many things in life, going through a divorce is a mental game, and you need to make some mental adjustments because your life is changing drastically. So today, I'd like to give you 3 mental adjustments that you need to make to protect your financial interests as you're entering into a divorce. Hi, my name is Sean Palmer with the Palmer Law Firm, and I've been practicing in the great state of Texas for 19 years. And you're going through a divorce and you're beginning to realize that there's a difference between what your mental attitude was before and as we're adjusting into your new life. And the first thing, the most urgent, I should say, thing that needs to get adjusted is your attitude about your finances and the property that you have. In other videos, I've talked about the different mental stages people go through a divorce, and it's a lot like the grief cycle. But the adjustment of your attitude about your finances and your assets is going to be critical, because the quicker you make that adjustment, the better the outcome for your divorce. So here are the 3 immediate tips you need to do. First thing is to begin to understand that the property that you have is no longer going to be all of yours together. It's going to be his or hers. And so you have to make that sort of adjustment, that you are now having a competitive and an adverse sometimes position from your spouse about your property. So you need to begin to be thinking about the fact that your spouse is no longer going to be having the same financial interests towards you. In law, we call this a fiduciary duty. And the fiduciary duty technically keeps on going on, but your mental attitude about whether or not your spouse is going to be taken care of, that's going to get adjusted real quick. You need to be at least in time with your spouse in terms of thinking about what's mine and what's his or hers. So a quick mental adjustment in that sense, that you won't be working cooperatively anymore. You won't be working in tandem anymore on financial goals and things of that nature. And you need to set yourself some new goals that include your new life separated from your spouse. So that's tip number 1. Begin to understand that you're going to be having competitive views and attitudes about the other spouse, and the quicker you realize that, the better you won't get cheated. I'll tell you a quick story, an unfortunate story. I had a client, and she was going through the divorce, and there was a long separation that preceded her coming to see me. And during that time, she was really more focused on the relationship. She was more focused on, the emotional aspects of it, which is natural. However, her husband was further along mentally in that, and he was thinking more about the property. And what he did basically was started to remove items from the home, not in any amount that would be noticeable at first, but by the time that we had attempted to get temporary orders, it was very difficult to show items that had been around in the house. She didn't take stock of it. She didn't make any kind of inventory. And it was difficult to show that the item had even existed. So that's one of the examples of when you don't change your mental attitude, how that can bite you later on down the line. Moving on to the second tip, which is closely related, is you have to have a complete understanding of all the assets that you have and all the debts that you're obliged to pay. And you need to make it yourself an inventory or a list of all of the things that you have. Try to be as detailed as possible. It's difficult to remember off the top of your head all the things you owe or own. And so you're going to need to write this down and do a little bit of research. So knowing account numbers, for your various cash accounts, as well as your debt counts. You really want to get a good handle on what's out there, and of course your community estate that's going to get divided in the divorce is a combination of your debts and your assets. So you need to know both equally as well. A lot of spouses allow the other spouse to manage all their finances and then be very, very far in the dark. But as soon as possible, as soon as you're contemplating a divorce, you need to do information gathering and understand what's out there, including 401ks, retirement accounts, real property that might have been bought, and try to get all that information to your attorney. The best way, of course, to do that is just make a list or a spreadsheet of the asset, what you perceive to be the value of it, when it was acquired, because that's important, whether it's going to be considered community or separate, depends on if it was acquired before or after the date of marriage. So you need to compile that list of assets and debts and get a real good, as best you can, handle early on about what you think is out there as far as your community. The third sort of mental adjustment that you need to make is to begin to think about, now that you have a better idea of what is out there as far as your community estate, you need to start thinking about what would be considered a fair and equitable division of that. Now, that is going to be kind of subjective. In the state of Texas, we divide the property in a just and right manner, not necessarily 50%, but even if it is something approaching 50% or thereabouts, you need to still consider about what particular assets are it that you, at the end of the divorce, that you want to walk away from. So a good rule of thumb is, on that list we were mentioned before, if it's less than $500 and you don't really care about it, it's, you don't really have to put it on the list. But if it's less than $500 and it has a great sentimental value to you, you're going to want to make note of that and put it on your list and start thinking about how you're going to be able to get that into your column in the divorce, either through mediation or requesting it through the court system. So you also want to think long term in terms of your goals. So if you own a home and you want to keep the home, then you're going to need to offset the value of your portion of the home or your spouse's portion of the home with some other asset, say a 401k. So thinking about what your future is going to be in the next, say, 5 years, that sort of mental adjustment is that you're not going to be you're not going to be married, you're going to be divorced, living on your own. What assets do you need? What assets do you want? So there you are, 3 sort of mental adjustments you need to make. Again, the first is to get a handle on the concept that you're going to have separate economic interests from your spouse from now on. Second is to get a good handle on what is the community property, including debts and assets. And the third is to get a good handle on what you see your future in with those assets are, and what you need, what you think is a good property division. I hope that list's been helpful. If you have any questions about this video or anything else related to divorce or family law in the state of Texas, please reach out to us and we'll help you any way that we can. Good luck.